Hi, Nick here at Lunar Awakening. Welcome back to my channel where I aim to be a guiding compass to others who are looking to enlighten their spirit. In this video, I want to cover off the difference between someone who's using control to exert power in their life and someone who's looking at life from a position of love, and how these two may play out in terms of outcomes and what we can do to sort of improve our life. And just to summarise, that is by living with more love and joy and peace. So when I looked up the word control, it explained that it's the ability to have power or influence over an outcome or a person's behaviour. So to me, control is, and let me say, I probably used to be a controlling person. When you're controlling situations, using power means using energy. So we're having to exert force. We're having to try to micromanage the situation in order to get the outcome that we think we want. And it doesn't really allow much space or much breadth for variations or change. And that can lead to a lot of distress in an individual if they're expecting a certain outcome, or they will only be happy if there is one outcome. And then what if that outcome doesn't happen? Or what if, you're no longer able to control the situation because maybe you don't have the finances anymore, or you just don't have the energy or the time. And then what happens to your psyche when, you're trying to hold on to all the puppet strings and manage everything and get the outcomes that you think you want? And it's something that, I did for a bit of time, and it's really tiring, and it doesn't allow you to really just kick back and relax, because maybe there's an underlying fear there. If you feel like you need to control, then maybe it's because you don't believe that people are true to their word, or that they really got your back, or they really want these things for you. And so you're living in a constant state of anxiety, potentially, either anxiety over getting the outcome that you want, or anxiety that, you might not be able to manipulate these people or influence them, or, anxiety over the events and situations that are unfolding. Now, when we look at life from a perspective of love, by comparison, love that is ever present, ever reaching, and it makes no judgments. When you're in a loving relationship, what are the underlying principles of that relationship? It's trust, security, balance, both bringing value into the situation, just that sense of knowing, of belonging. You actually feel love. You don't need to intellectualize love, or if you're trying to intellectualize love, then please stop, because that's not the way to go about it. We need to feel love in our heart center. This should be a feeling state, not an intellectualizing activity that takes up brain power. When you're near someone you love, you should just feel warm, and it should just feel fuzzy, and it should just feel nice. You shouldn't, when you're in love, feel fearful, second guessing, questioning, afraid. You shouldn't be walking on eggshells. These are not the emotions or feeling states that go with a loving relationship. So when you're in a controlling relationship, one of the parties, the one that's being controlled, there's every possibility that they're going to feel resentful. They're going to feel like they don't have their own say, that they're not able to communicate themselves effectively, maybe. And over time, that's really going to wear that person down. And the person who's doing the controlling, they're always relying on that manipulation to win that person over. And that's as much as, they don't love themselves if they're having to rely on manipulations to rely on people being there for them or doing things for them. Or if they're relying on, the outcome of an emotion from the other person, like say you buy them a gift and you're absolutely hanging on to the fact that it's going to make them happy and they're going to feel joy. And then that's how they'll stay with you, because you made them feel happy for 5 minutes after giving them this bracelet or something, a gift. So when we look at love and relationships from a perspective of love, when we look at it from love, that's just a knowing. And you don't have to feel the fear, and you don't have to feel the anxiety, and you don't have to think you're less than, because you just know. when you love yourself and then you learn to love another, like, and that other person loves themselves as well, then the two of you are just like in this state of like bliss, because you got nothing to fear, like, right? Because you love each other and you trust one another and you're secure. And you know that you're not relying on the manipulations. And you know that you don't need to constantly be keeping an eye on them thinking, are they still interested in me? Because you know that they're interested in you, because they'll just show it. It'll just become evident. And so when we're acting in our life, when we're trying to, you know, have events or people around, like, just think about it. Like, are you trying to control the situation? Because control is fear. Or are you loving these people? Are you coming at the relationship, are you coming at the event from a perspective of love, which will be much lighter, much more enjoyable, much more freeing? And yeah, that's about it really. I mean, just sit back, and when you're in your relationships with other people, or when you're trying to organise events in your life, just try and think about what perspective are you using? And what perspective are the people around you using? Like, are they relying on you being around by them controlling situations? Because it's quite tiring being on the other end of that spectrum, like being the one who's being controlled, or being the one who's meant to act a certain way to keep the other person happy. Whereas when we all come at life from a perspective of love, then we're all able to give and receive much more freely. We're not judging the other person. We're not trying to manipulate them, and we just end up living happier, more harmonious lives. So that's just a little summary from me on how I see the difference between controlling life and loving life, the outcomes that might lead to for the people in that dynamic, why it's beneficial to look at life and really embody that feeling of love, and to just trust that the people in your life are there because they love you. And one thing about the whole love thing is, if you've always spent your life controlling situations and places and people and things, then moving into that state of love and trusting the love process can be absolutely terrifying, because your subconscious mind would have learned to control as a way of getting what it needs, you know, getting its needs met. So when you're trying to change that narrative, that way of looking, that perspective, that perception, when you're looking to change that, it's going to be really hard for your brain to accept that. I mean, it's going to be like an ego death, because this will be part of your, like, the way that your ego has been built to just manage life through extreme controlling situations. And so when you're trying to then change that perspective to one of love, it can just be a real shock to the system, and you might go into like extreme fight or flight responses as a way of trying to, you know, get back into that controlling nature. So you have to be prepared for that. You have to like brace yourself that you might go into a fear response, and if you do, to show compassion for yourself, to forgive yourself, to send love to yourself, ironically, like learn to love yourself for who you are today, because it's only when we can accept who we are today that we're able to change. So when you make that transition, it might be hard. You might want to go into a fight or flight response, but you have to let that go. You have to find another way, because to be in that controlling situation for so long can be really exhausting and really tiring. And the only way to get out of it is to just work through it. You have to work through that fear barrier and then just start expressing love and just trust the process. And when you do that, some people, they might fall away because maybe they were benefiting from the way that you were acting before. And then they might then not feel as connected to you. And so they might naturally fall away. But that's something as well that we just have to accept in this process, that as we raise our consciousness, as we vibrate higher, as we have a higher frequency, then some people aren't going to be able to match that frequency, and it's going to feel off to them. And we have to accept that that's how they feel right now, and they will have to learn to accept that we've obviously changed and the dynamic just isn't the same anymore. So I hope that's been a helpful video on the difference between a loving life and a controlling life, how you can start to unpick that, some of the consequences that might happen when you do. And yeah, let me know how you get on with that. Like, see if you can identify people in your life who are trying to control situations rather than come at them from a perspective of love, and see how it see how it plays out. Like, see how you feel about it if you notice it, if you catch it now, just see how it makes you feel. Like, if you notice when you're being controlled, or if you see someone controlling someone else, how that plays out for them. So yeah, let me know how you get on. Put a comment below. Like the video if you thought this was interesting. Subscribe to the channel, and I look forward to seeing you on another video soon.